What is going on, guys? ScorpionSlayer66 here, coming at you for another monthly pickups video. Now, I didn't get much this month compared to other months, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about these albums, so let's get right into it. Starting off with tapes, I didn't get many this month, so I'm just going to kind of rapid fire through these. First one I got is the game's documentary, Quintessential 2000s Hip Hop. Next up is Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the J card, but still one of the best rap records of all time. Very aggressive, very punk, very metal in nature. Soundgarden, Super Unknown. Classic album, I don't know what else to say. It has Black Hole Sun on it. The Cure, The Head on the Door. Probably their most poppy release in terms of The Cure, you know, as poppy as they can possibly get. Still fantastic, you know, it has Kyoto Song, which became one of their biggest songs, so cool to have this one. And these last two were the two I was definitely the most excited for, and I'm just going to show them together. It is Minor Threat's Out of Step and Fugazi's Steady Diet of Nothing. If you guys don't know, Ian MacKaye headed both of these bands, that's why I'm showing you them together. And they're both just fantastic punk albums. I mean, they were very different from the punk that was going on. They were very melodic, very in tune with their instrumentation, just fantastic shit going on here. Definitely check these out if you haven't. And starting off with the records, we have Neil Young's self-titled debut. Very, very cool album. It's very Buffalo Springfield inspired still. You know, he just left the band and released this, so it's very reminiscent of their music. Pretty cool gatefold. It's pretty standard. It just has some, you know, lyrics, some writing, and a really cool picture of Neil in the kitchen. So, yeah, fantastic. Not as good as his later stuff would be, but really good for a debut album. Next up is one of my favorite albums of 2017 so far, and this is Joey Badass, All American Badass. Really awesome hip-hop, very New York, 90s New York inspired hip-hop, very Wu-Tang inspired, Tupac, Biggie, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, awesome gatefold on this one. I really like this picture of Joey and how it has all the lyrics around him, and how it has like a little message about how the government sucks in the modern day. So, yeah, really awesome imagery all over. I mean, it's very politically charged, so some people might be turned off by that, but it's a really great record, and I think it is an important one in 2017, so cool to own this one. Some quintessential psychedelic funk rock here. This is Funkadelic's Maggot Brain. Really awesome, extremely psychedelic inspired funk music. Lots of really deep grooves on this album, a lot of awesome instrumentation. I mean, Thomas Dolby is a fantastic guitarist. A lot of people argue that he's just as good, if not better, than Jimi Hendrix. Really awesome gatefold on the inside here of the band in all their 70s glory with their bell-bottom jeans. It's a beautiful thing. So, if you guys know of Childish Gambino, his newest album, Awaken My Love, was heavily inspired by this, even down to the album art. So, yeah, awesome, awesome album. One of the 70s best in terms of funk rock. So, really cool to own this one. Next up, we have one of last year's best albums, and this is Anderson .Paak's Malibu. Really awesome soul, funk, R&B album here. Anderson's voice is so unique, but it really does fit his type of music so well. And, you know, this is a really summer record. It's very upbeat, but its low beat moments are very still, like, sunshiny in the weirdest way possible. It's a double LP. Unfortunately, it's not a gatefold. I think he could have done a lot of cool imagery with everything that's going on the cover itself, but fantastic album, definitely one of my favorites from last year, and you guys should definitely check him out if you haven't. Finally found a copy of Their Satanic Majesty's Request by the Rolling Stones. Very Beatles, especially like Sgt. Pepper inspired, even down to the cover art, and a lot of the music here is heavily Beatles inspired. If we take it out, maybe I can show off the lenticular better, but yeah, really cool. The album itself is just kind of okay to me. But a lot of the imagery and a lot of the packaging itself was a really solid selling point to me. So, yeah, if you guys like Sgt. Pepper, you might as well give it a try. It's just okay, but yeah, still cool to own this one finally. Continuing to add to my ever-growing Neil Young collection, this is Neil Young and Crazy Horse Rust Never Sleeps. Now, I don't know a ton about Neil Young, so I've gone to a lot of lists to see like what his best albums are by most people, and I've always seen this in at least the top 5 or 10, so when I saw it for $5, I had to pick it up. I unfortunately haven't listened to it yet, but I am anticipating doing so. Love adding to my indie collection. This is Modest Mouse, We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank. I mean, first off, that cover is the most tattooed Modest Mouse thing ever, so gotta give it that. But yeah, this is a very poppy, at least for a Modest Mouse, poppy album, and it's okay. It's definitely one of their weaker albums in my personal opinion. It's not their weakest. I think their follow-up to this was more weak, But still pretty good album. Really awesome packaging on this. It's a super nice matte finish, and it has all these like cool like Victorian inspired drawings and stuff. So yeah, good album. You know, I want to complete Modest Mouse collection. They're one of my favorite bands, so inevitably had to pick this up at some point. Definitely one of the best deals I found this month. This is an original pressing of Sonic Youth's debut album. Not a cheap album by any means, but pretty good album. It's a lot different from their further work. This is very like dub inspired, whereas their later stuff would be more like art, experimental rock. Again, they're another band that I want a complete collection of, so this one was going to have to come sooner or later. And I was just at a record store and I found it for a killer deal, so I said, why the fuck not? Yet another band I want a complete discography of. This is Death Grip's Government Plates. I'm only, I think, 1 or 2 now away from owning the complete Death Grip's discography. And unfortunately, the official pressings of this are like $300-400, so I had to settle with a bootleg for now, but eventually I'll get the real one. But yeah, definitely one of Death Grip's weaker albums. It's very different from their other stuff, for lack of a better term. I don't know how to describe it because Death Grips in and of themselves are very different, but this one just doesn't fit up to the caliber of their other releases like Bottomless Pit, The Money Store, Ex-Military, and stuff. So yeah, cool album still. I really like it, but just compared to the rest of their stuff, it's definitely not one of their best. Finally finished up my Tame Impala collection with Inner Speaker. I like this a little bit more than Currents, but it's definitely nowhere near the caliber of Lonerism for me. Lonerism is like one of my favorite fucking albums, but this one is nowhere near that for me. But I do like the imagery a lot more on this. It's very psychedelic, very 60s inspired, you know. Really, really beautiful artwork. But yeah, this is some like psychedelic revival music, very Beatles inspired, you know, that whole era really. But yeah, I encourage you guys to give it a try because I think Tame Impala is one of the more interesting bands to come out of the 2010s, but I would say that try Lonerism first. That's definitely their most accessible. Then if you like that, go to this, and then try out Currents. Currents seems to be love or hate by most fans because it's very different from their other stuff in terms of what the base of the instrumentation is, but yeah, fantastic album regardless. I really love this cover though. So one of my friends who works at a record store actually gave me this out of her personal collection, and this is Death Cab for Cutie, Transatlanticism. Now, I'm not super huge into Death Cab. I think this is probably their only fantastic album, but like I said, this is some fantastic shit going on. I love the cover, and the gatefold is pretty cool if I remember right. Yeah, really awesome picture here. But yeah, really good. It's like 2000s emo indie music, for lack of a better term. I don't know how you would describe it exactly, but it's very in tune with its emotions and angst and stuff like that. But fantastic, very, very good album. Definitely one of the better ones to come out of its era. So yeah, highly recommend this one, especially if you're trying to get into like that indie folk-ish music. Death Cab's a weird band. This was a really cool find. This is a bootleg of Frank Ocean's Channel Orange. None of Frank's albums except for Blonde are officially on vinyl, and even then it's very expensive to find. But I traded in a bunch of records that I didn't care about, and I got in like $300 worth of credit at one of my record stores, and this was one of the albums I picked up with that money. Like I said, it's a bootleg, doesn't sound fantastic, but I really adore this album. I think it's one of the best of the 2010s. I only think that he was bettered himself with Blonde, but a lot of people would disagree with me on that. Fantastic though, very poppy, art-inspired pop music, but yeah, awesome. It comes on like 2 different color records, but it's really not important because it's a bootleg, so really awesome album though. This was awesome. I got this on Record Store Day, but it wasn't a Record Store Day exclusive, and this is Iggy Pop's The Idiot. Now, this was a limited edition, limited to 1,000 on this really cool like yellowish red vinyl. But yeah, my personal favorite Iggy Pop solo album, if you guys don't know Iggy and the Stooges, this was that Iggy. And he went on to do a lot more stuff that would inspire the post-punk movement, things like Joy Division, New Order, that kind of stuff. And really bizarre fun fact about this album is when Ian Curtis of Joy Division killed himself, this was actually the record he was listening to while doing so. So I can't listen to the album the same after I read that fact, but fantastic album. Like I said, very post-punk inspired. If you like drum machines, you know, Depeche Mode kind of stuff, this is really early inklings of that movement. So fantastic, really cool limited edition. Shout out to Dan from the Rebel Gaming Club for reminding me I needed this album badly. This is Bob Dylan, The Times They Are A-Changin'. One of his first albums, definitely one of his most folk-inspired albums, but his songwriting on this was just top-notch. I mean, Bob went on to do later stuff like Blonde on Blonde and Highway 61 Revisited, but I think in terms of sheer songwriting, this was definitely his best album. Very politically charged for the time. You know, he was around during the civil rights movement and that kind of stuff, so he was very figurehead in that type of movement. So yeah, really awesome like folk rock, awesome like poetic lyrics. You know, Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize recently for writing, and this is definitely one of the albums that demonstrates that the most. So again, shout outs to Dan from the Rebel Gaming Club. Thank you for reminding me I needed this. Complete change of pace. This is Converge's Jane Doe. This is some really awesome like hardcore punk, hardcore mathcore. I would even put it in almost that like extreme metal category. You know, growly, explosive vocals. First off, awesome fucking gatefold. Yeah, really awesome, just very heavy, deep music. And this is an album where I think if you research what went into the album in terms of life events that happened with the crew members and just the production stages of this album, it adds a lot to it. There's a lot of personal shit that when you go back and listen to this album, it gives it a whole new meaning, and it's a fantastic album. Definitely one of the best metal hardcore records of the 2000s. Yet another bootleg for this episode, and this is Death Grip's Ex-Military. With this, I only need one or two more Death Grips albums to have them all, and I'm super psyched for that. But one of my favorite Death Grips releases, definitely a top 3 for me. And this one was just very in your face. This was their debut mixtape besides their Death Grips EP, but this was like the first full-length project they put out. And it was just one of the most crazy things that I've ever heard. Definitely one of the 2010's best albums in my opinion. I mean, I love Death Grips. I think they are the best group to come out of the 2010s so far. And this album's just fucking insane. If I could give you one track to sum up this album, I would listen to Spread Eagle Across the Block. Some very noisy, punk rock, metal-inspired hip-hop, but not like you'd think. It's more metal and punk in nature than it is in instrumentation. Zach Hill of Hella fame does the drums. All of it is live drumming, and MC Ride just screams the entire record. Like, I remember there was a review I watched where somebody compared it to a prison inmate, you know, scared straight on record. So, yeah, very bizarre fucking record, but definitely one of my favorites of the 2010s, Death Grip's Ex-Military. Definitely listen to this one. Stoked to add more to my Sufjan Stevens collection. This is Michigan. Definitely one of my favorites by him. Really, he does just fantastic gatefold work. I'm sorry, but his artwork is just always so beautiful, so simple. But yeah, Sufjan Stevens, indie god, if you want to call him that. But yeah, really awesome, like folk rock inspired indie music, very inspired lyrics. The entire album's about the great state of Michigan, and each song represents a different piece of history about the said state. So really cool. It's an awesome like folk rock concept album, and yeah, Sufjan's just ridiculously talented in my opinion. So cool to finally own this one. Speaking of Sufjan Stevens, we have what most people consider his masterpiece, and this is Illinois. Now, it's not my personal favorite Sufjan record, but many people do agree that this is his best, and I can definitely see why. Again, it's a very indie folk-inspired music, but this one was a more adventurous with its instrumentation and its themes. Again, it's based all in the state of Illinois, so you know there's songs about Chicago and certain things like John Wayne Gacy, and a lot of history that went along with the state. And again, Sufjan just kills the packaging. I mean, it's a trifold, so it comes out to this really beautiful image. And again, you flip it on the back. It's just, he puts a lot of effort into his packaging, and that's something I appreciate a ton. And yeah, again, just one of the better indie albums of the 2000s. Fantastic stuff. Just not my personal favorite Sufjan record. Like I said earlier, always excited to add to that Modest Mouse collection. And this is their debut. This is A Long Drive for Someone with Nothing to Think About. And it's crazy to think that Modest Mouse were the ones who brought indie rock to the forefront in the early 2000s. And when you look back on their earlier albums, how innovative they truly were for their time. Just really amazing, emotionally charged indie music. And especially that first song off this album, Dramamine. I mean, thanks to my homie Dave Parks over at D-Dave, I actually figured out that was the song that got them signed, and it's not hard to see why. Just a very, again, emotionally in touch with itself record, and a fantastic debut for a band that would do a lot bigger things with their next 2 albums. Very excited to own this one. This is Bjork Debut. Now, I love Bjork. I've just never been able to find her albums out in the wild, and a store that I've been frequently visiting recently actually had a ton of them. Again, this was my favorite, so this is the first one I picked up. Very awesome album. A lot of people see it as dated in terms of like electronic music, but I really don't see it dated at all. I actually think it's very forward-thinking, very progressive, and very ahead of its time. And this is really cool. The only shitty thing is that this packaging kind of sucks, because how you would normally display the album, the slits at the top, so you have to pull the record out. I kind of hate that shit. But it comes on this very nice, like, sandy beige color. But yeah, awesome album, very good electronic music, and yeah, a lot of people see Bjork as an easy way to get into electronic music, and I can definitely see why, especially with this album. So yeah, Bjork debut, again, artist I've been looking for stuff for the longest time, and just now I'm starting my collecting journey with her. Another one of the best albums of the 2000s, and one of my all-time favorites, this is Sufjan Stevens' Carrie and Lowell. Another very emotionally charged folk indie record. You know, Sufjan wrote this as he was grieving over the death of his mother, and there's a very troubled past there. And again, like I said about Converge's Jane Doe, this is an album that if you research the history behind his relationship with his mother, or if you listen to this album a couple times and see through the lyrics what his relationship was like, it was a very complicated and very agonizing relationship, and it's really cool to see, not cool, but it's very interesting to see how he grieves with the process of knowing a woman he barely himself knew. But still, it's his mom, so there's like that really emotional edge to it. So yeah, fantastic record. I just think Sufjan is a genius in terms of songwriting. I think he's one of the best that's ever done it, and this album is a prime example why. Very excited to own this one. This is my personal favorite Sufjan Stevens record. This is Seven Swans, and again, another very folky inspired indie album, but with this one, it just tackles a lot of issues that I myself face, you know, things about loneliness, things about questioning religions, and, you know, just that kind of stuff. And what's cool about this specific version that I got, this was the 2007 repress, and this has a bonus 7-inch of 2 songs that were previously unreleased from these sessions, and they are very excellent as well. So again, like I said about Carrie and Lowell, Sufjan is just an amazing songwriter, and even with the most minimal of instrumentation, his songwriting outshines everything. So fantastic record, and definitely probably the easiest place to get into Sufjan in my personal opinion. Speaking of great songwriters, this is Elliott Smith XO, my personal favorite Elliott Smith album, and if you guys have known me for a little while, you'll have known that Elliott Smith is my personal favorite, just straight up songwriter of all time. Again, another one of my all-time favorite albums. It's just, Elliott was so in tune with his emotions and wrote in such an eloquent manner that, you know, even though the instrumentation is so good and so flawless, it's just this songwriting really spearheads this whole album, and just amazing. And again, another one of those artists as a whole where if you research what he was going through during this period, or even just his whole life, it really makes the album a lot more engaging. So XO by Elliott Smith, fantastic fucking record. Finally scored a copy of Harvest by Neil Young, and you know, what's crazy about this album is it's not rare at all, it's not hard to find at all, it's just one that's been hard for me to personally acquire in my area, but I finally got a copy. I got one of the more recent reissues that was remastered from the original tapes, and yeah, it sounds fantastic. Again, lovely gatefold. It's really cool how this inside is shiny, the gatefold, but the outside is like this really nice matte finish. But yeah, Neil Young, you know, quintessential like kind of country rock music, but again, another excellent songwriter who uses minimal instrumentation, except for one certain song on here that a lot of people don't like. But yeah, fantastic. Awesome songwriting, very great vibe-worthy music. You know, you can listen to it and you can dissect his lyrics or his instrumentation, but if you really just let the album play, it's a very nice background music album, and again, just fantastic stuff. My personal favorite Neil record, Harvest. The last Modest Mouse album I'm going to show you for this video, this is The Lonesome Crowded West. Many people say that this is their best album. It's my second favorite to Moon and Antarctica, but I can definitely see why a lot of people would say that this is their best. Really awesome songwriting, very interesting instrumentation, especially on the first song, Teeth Like God's Shoe Shine. Just fantastic, but I'm going to rant real quick. If you're going to do a double LP, please do a gatefold, and especially don't do this shit where they put each album in its own sleeve and then kind of just wrapped it in plastic. Just put the fucking gatefold on or make it a single jacket sleeve. Like, don't do this ugly shit. This doesn't look good. But anyways, fantastic album, and I'm very excited to own it. I am only missing 2 Modest Mouse albums, Good News for people that like bad news, and their latest one. I don't even know what it's called because I don't care for that one so much. But yeah, awesome to finally own this one. And the last record I'm going to show you guys for this video, this is Wire's Pink Flag. Now, this is a holy grail for me. This is an album that I've loved and appreciated since the first time I listened to it a couple of years ago, and it's just extremely hard to find on vinyl. It was only ever pressed once officially in 1977 when it came out, so prices on eBay, Discogs, Amazon are like at least 100 plus, but I paid nowhere near that thanks to a cool record store, and they saw my passion about this album and they gave me a really solid deal on it. It's pretty much in flawless shape, except for like a couple of the songs have some surface noise. But yeah, amazing, like not exactly experimental, but very different art punk, I guess, for the best way to describe this. But yeah, fantastic album. It's not my favorite that I've showed off in this video by any means, but it was definitely the best deal I found this month, and it's a grail that I've been looking for since I pretty much started vinyl collecting. So very, very stoked to finally own this one. So that is everything I got in the month of April, guys. Let me know down in the comments what was your favorite thing that I picked up. And while you're down there, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, take care.